Welcome back to Dude We Can Fix It. Today I'm going to show you how to change the intake manifold gaskets on your GM truck. This works for the 4.8, 5.3, and 6.0 engines. Now the very first thing we're going to do is loosen this 8mm bolt and pop off the engine cover. Then we'll come in here, pull this tab up like such, depress here, and pull the connector off the MAF sensor. Then we're going to remove or loosen these 4 T25 bolts holding the airbox together. And now loosen this clamp holding the intake assembly to the throttle body. We just need a flathead screwdriver or looks like about a 10mm socket. Now that that's loose, we'll disconnect it. Wiggle and pull. Set this aside. I'm going to use a 15mm socket and ratchet to loosen the tensioner and remove the serpentine belt. I'll just let it hang out down there, out of the way. Now before we remove the alternator, we need to take a 5/16 wrench and disconnect the negative side of the battery. That way you don't have any chance of creating a short when you disconnect the positive lead from the alternator. Get that down out of the way. So now we'll remove this protective boot from the back of the alternator and use a 10mm socket to remove this positive lead. This is your charging lead that goes from the alternator to the battery. Remove your lead, set it out of the way, and then put this nut back on so you don't lose it. Now we'll remove this clip. Simply squeeze it and pull it straight out. Now we can remove the 2 15mm alternator mounting bolts. And you may need to use a pry bar to pry up on the alternator to get it loose. Then you can remove it from the engine bay and set it out of the way. Next, we'll remove the 3 10mm bolts. Now we'll finesse this bracket. I believe it goes to right about there. And you'll be able to pull this off and then pop this connector out. We have a 10mm here that is holding on this wiring harness. There is a vacuum hose here that needs to come off. This hose may need to be replaced by the looks of it. Now let's remove this connector here. Now we'll need to pull this vacuum line off of here. There you go. Alright, now we have our barometric pressure sensor back here. We need to disconnect that. And we have this other connector here. Disconnect it. Going to disconnect our vacuum line to our brake booster. Just pop that out. And now we need to disconnect our fuel line. There we go. Just pull it straight forward. Alright, we're gonna have to get our special fuel line tool to get this fuel line off. Alright, so now we'll need a 3/8 fuel line tool here. It's a quick connect, so this is a quick disconnect, supposedly. You pop that on your line. You push it in. You gotta push it in until you hear a little click. Oh, there it is. See, it's all the way in. Rotate it around a little bit and pull your fuel line off. You'll lose a little bit of fuel there. No worries. It's just gasoline. Now we're going to disconnect all of our wiring harnesses for our fuel injectors so that you can see what's going on. That's all it is. You just push in this little tab and pull it out. It looks like at some point there was this sort of safety on here, so I guess you just pull that back first and then disconnect your wiring harnesses on all these. And there's 4 of them on each side. Just pop them out. So yeah, disconnect these 4 and then disconnect the 4 on the other side. Now we're ready to start unbolting the intake plenum. So there's 5 of these 8mm bolts on each side. One there. One there. One there. One there. And one in the back. And then there's 5 more on the other side. So let's go ahead and unbolt those. Alright, so normally these do stay on the intake. You just gotta get them loose. I'm not quite sure why that first one decided to come right out. It may have been reused. Alright, so we got to disconnect this coolant crossover hose that goes to the throttle. Okay, that should do it. Now we're ready to go ahead and take the intake out of here. Be very careful. We have several vacuum hoses that are still somewhat connected. This one we can actually go ahead and pop out. That's part of the valve cover. But we do have this vacuum line here. We have this electrical harness, which we're going to have to be careful and route that out. So just take your time and work this out of here. First, pull it straight up and move it towards you a little bit. When it starts hanging up, adjust your electrical harness and your vacuum lines. There we go. Move it a little farther. Adjust your electrical harness, vacuum line. Walk it on up. Alright. Now the only thing that's remaining is we gotta get this vacuum line out from underneath here. So rotate it this way. Route that. Just spin it around. Route that down through there. Now we're free and clear. Now is a great time to go ahead and vacuum all of this area and make sure you don't have any debris laying around. Alright, so we can actually take this intake gasket off. And the new style gasket actually mounts to the block instead of to the intake. So we'll just clean these surfaces off. And get it ready to install. So there are 2 different type of intake gaskets that you might see. This is one kind. It's a flexible plastic and it has these clips on here, which is generally your standard OE type. So I will show you how to put these on, and then I'll also show you how to put on the metal ones that mount to the engine heads. So these come in a pack of 2. They're the same, as you can see, so you can't mix it up. So let's go ahead and put these on, and then I'll show you how to do the other ones. So this has a clip at the top and the bottom, and then one clip in the center. You'll face these with the pointed sides facing out, and you'll just set them on, push your clips, and it snaps into place, just like that. Super easy. Now I'll give you a little close-up on this side. Match it up like this. Top needs to clip. There we go. It's clipped up and over. Come down to the middle, push it in, the bottom, push it in. Boom. Clipped, clipped, and clipped. And that's it. They're on there. Now you just take and set this back on the engine and then bolt everything back up. Alright, so this gasket has these little tabs here that sit over this bolt and that bolt. Get it in place and then just push it in and down. So that's how these sit on there. If you have the other style gasket, they'll just clip onto the bottom of the intake. Now we need our knock sensor harness. So normally your knock sensor harness will sit right here. However, with this gasket, I don't know that it's going to fit that well. So I'm going to route it back behind here. Alright, so this intake is held down by 10 8mm bolts. You want to go ahead and start getting those put on. Make sure that your wiring harness is routed correctly. Make sure that your evap line, it goes underneath your fuel rail. You need to connect this hose right here. There we go. Alright, our 10 intake manifold bolts are nice and tight. I'll hook up our brake booster over here. Just make sure we go ahead and connect our barometric pressure sensor. Tighten this down a little bit. So wiring harness. Our knock sensor connector. Very nice. Go ahead and connect our fuel line. Alright, let's go ahead and put this keeper on our fuel line. Let's reconnect our evap solenoid. Need to put our keeper back in, pop it on, and push it over. So that's locked. We have electrical connector there. This must go to the alternator. We can go ahead and plug in all of our fuel injectors. Then we can plug in our fuel injectors on the other side as well. Plugged in our mass airflow sensor. Need to reconnect this hose here. Alright, now we need to connect this hose here for our, looks like a PCV. Our positive crankcase ventilation valve. Hooks there and hooks in the back. Just like that. We're ready to remount the alternator with these two 15mm bolts. What we're going to do first is tap these grommets outwards. That will make it much easier to get the alternator in there. Let's set the alternator in place and thread our two bolts through. And we'll need a 10mm socket to attach our charging lead. Now we can put our protective boot over the top, and also be sure to connect the alternator electrical connector. All right, that's all hooked up. All right, so now we can go ahead and recover our serpentine belt and route that. Then we use a 16mm socket to move the tensioner over. And if you forgot how your belt was routed, there's a handy guide right here on your fan shroud. All right, we're just about done. Put the air filter back in and route the air hose assembly. So we need a flathead screwdriver to tighten up our hose clamp. Now we need to tighten up our T25 screws that hold the air box together. Plug in our mass airflow sensor. And now we'll place our engine cover back in the clips in the rear and use an 8mm socket to tighten down the bolt. Well, that's how you change the intake gaskets on your GM truck. If this video was useful to you, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and tune in for more Dude We Can Fix It videos.